So, you've probably seen the headlines. Russian bombers, US fighter jets, a tense situation up there near Alaska. Well, today we're going to cut through all that noise and get to what's really going on in the skies over the Arctic.
Look, anytime you see the words Russian bombers in a headline, your brain kind of jumps to conclusions, right? Escalation, danger. But was this really a major provocation, or was it something else entirely? Let's break it down.
All right, so let's set the scene. We're talking about Thursday, February 19th, 2026. A whole formation of Russian military planes gets picked up flying in international airspace, right off the western coast of Alaska, near the Bering Strait.
And it all started with this number, 5. That's how many Russian military aircraft were flying together in this coordinated group.
And we're not talking about just any random assortment of planes here. No. This was a whole strategic package. You've got two Tu-95 long-range bombers, the Muscle. They're being escorted by two really advanced Su-35 fighter jets for protection. And then you've got this A-50 spy plane, which is basically a flying command post.
Yeah, so as you can probably guess, a formation like that doesn't just fly by unnoticed. The North American Aerospace Defense Command, you know them as Norad, the joint U.S. and Canadian command, they immediately scrambled their own jets to go see what was up.
So, what was the response? 9. A total of 9 Norad aircraft were sent into the air. Their mission was pretty clear. Intercept the Russian formation, get a positive ID on them, and then escort them while they were in the area.
And this wasn't just a couple of fighter jets either. NORAD brought a whole team to the party. You had F-16s and F-35s to do the intercepting, but they also brought an E-3 Sentry, which is like a giant radar dish in the sky, and 4 KC-135 tankers so the fighters could refuel in mid-air and stay up there for as long as they needed.
Okay, so this is the big question, right? The one everyone's thinking. Were they trespassing? Were they being aggressive? To really answer that, we've got to understand these invisible lines that exist in the sky.
To really get what's going on, we have to talk about a very specific bit of airspace. It's called an Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ for short, and that's where this whole encounter happened.
So what is an ADIZ? Well, think of it like a country's personal space bubble. It's an early warning system that stretches way out past a country's actual borders into international airspace. It's not their territory, but it is an area where they basically say, hey, if you're flying in our bubble, you need to tell us who you are.
I love this analogy here. Sovereign airspace? That's inside your house. You absolutely need permission to come in. The ADIZ, though, that's more like your front porch. And here's the critical part. The Russian planes stayed on the porch. They never tried to open the front door and enter US or Canadian sovereign airspace.
Okay, so now that we know the rules of the road, so to speak, let's break down how an interception like this actually plays out, step by step. You know, it might sound super dramatic, but it's actually a really professional step-by-step dance. First, NORAD's huge network of radars gets a ping. Then, they launch fighters to get what they call eyes on the contacts. Once they're up there and confirm exactly who and what they're looking at, they just fly alongside them, maintaining a safe distance until the other planes leave the zone.
Now you might be thinking this was some crazy, isolated incident that just happened to make the news. But, and this is a big but, it's not. Not even close. When you look at the recent history, you realize this is part of a much, much bigger pattern. Just take a look at the last couple of years. You had a historic joint patrol with China, you had a single Russian spy plane getting intercepted 4 times in 1 week, and then you had an almost identical interception to the one we're talking about today. You get the picture. This isn't an anomaly. It's becoming the new normal.
Which leads to the obvious question. If this happens so often, what's the point? Why are both sides burning all this fuel and sending these incredibly expensive jets up there to just fly next to each other? Let's get into the why.
And honestly, this right here, this official quote from NORAD, this is the key to the whole thing. They explicitly say this kind of thing is not seen as a threat. And when you think about the kind of heavy-duty military hardware involved, that language tells you we're watching something other than a build-up to a fight.
So what's really going on is a kind of high-stakes messaging system. For Russia, it's a way to say, hey, we're a major player in the Arctic. And it's also a chance to poke at NORAD's defenses, see how fast they react. And for NORAD, it's the best live-fire drill you could ask for. It's a real-world test to make sure all their systems and their pilots are sharp and ready to go.
So when you boil it all down, that's exactly what this is. It's a demonstration. It's a carefully managed, very serious game of cat and mouse. It's both sides showing the other, hey, we see you, we're here, we're ready. It's tense, for sure, but it's a professional routine.
And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to chew on, doesn't it? When military bombers and spy planes flying near another country's border is officially described as routine, what does that really tell us about the world we're living in? It just goes to show how something that once would have seemed extraordinary has become just another predictable, if tense, part of our new normal.